Hello, welcome to Dark Fair Astrology. Hopefully, this is recording okay. Welcome to Dark Fair Astrology, and you're joining me for a video on Neptune in Aries. We'll be looking at this transit. It is a huge transit, as you can already see. It's from Monday, the 26th of January this year, 2026, all the way until 2039. Neptune has a very long transit in each sign. And if you have some thoughts on what happened from March till September last year, that's a really great preview because actually Neptune went into Aries then. He dipped his toes in. We got to get a bit of a feel of what that's like. And then he retrograded and spent his last time in Pisces all the way up until this Monday. So we are literally on the brink of Neptune going into Aries right now this weekend when I'm shooting. And I thought it'd be good to look at things such as what's the planet like, what's the mythology behind the planet, what he's going into, what that means overall, and then for each sign I've broken it down so you can actually go into the timestamps and go along to what you want to see for specifically for your sun and rising sign. I think this is a really important transit. For your moon aspects, what I have experienced and what I think is that this is an important transit, especially if you have a moon in a cardinal sign, so Aries or Libra or Capricorn, or especially if you have and sometimes going over the certain degree as well when he's transiting, it could have an effect on your home life. I'm saying that because of my own experience experiencing Neptune in Pisces, and I'm a Virgo rising, so that was a mutable to mutable relationship, and now we're going into cardinal relationships. And I would suggest that if you have a moon in one of those cardinal signs, to also check perhaps what it is for Neptune to be in Aries for you. So that's Aries, Capricorn, and Libra people. Hopefully I make sense. And Cancer. Sorry, Cancer is also a cardinal sign. So yeah, sorry about that. So anyway, I'm going to go into it, and as I go along, hopefully you get the gist of this presentation. As I mentioned below, everything is time stamped, so feel free to jump ahead if you prefer to. So let's go into the next slide, which is Neptune, the planet. Okay, so hopefully you can read that. I've tried my best to make sure that everything is captured in there. Okay, so Neptune, the planet. So first of all, he's known in astrology as a modern planet. That's why he's not included in the Hellenic. He's the modern ruler of Pisces. The traditional ruler is actually Jupiter. Neptune was only discovered in 1846, so he's actually one of the more recent discoveries that we have. And it was the first time a planet was found through mathematical predictions rather than observations, seeing through a telescope. So it was also very unusual in that aspect. The planet was named after the Roman god of the seas and the waters, and now the oceans, which is Neptune. And the Greek name is, of course, Poseidon or Poseidonas, as they say in Greek. I'm sure my pronunciation is butchered completely. And technically, the god of the oceans itself is Oceanus. He's known as the belt that runs around the world, around the earth. The uncle of Poseidon, but we, in more everyday terms, we see Poseidon as the ruler of all the waters of that we have here on the earth. So that's just kind of like how he fits into our modern day Neptunal concepts. It is the outermost planet in astronomy, because of course Pluto has now been denigrated to a dwarf planet, and sometimes because of Pluto's ecliptical cycle, actually Neptune is the most outermost planet. So sometimes Pluto is actually closer towards the Earth in the way that it loops around the sun. So yeah, it is the most outer planet, and I find that interesting because then he would become the boundary of the solar system, and Neptune is known to dissolve. So as in mythologically, so it's interesting that the outermost boundary is where we actually dissolve into the rest of the universe. The planet has the strongest winds in the solar system. We're looking at winds that got to 2,000 kilometers per hour. In context, on Earth, the strongest winds are 250 kilometers per hour. So you can see the magnitude of like 100 times more on Neptune. And they surpass the speed of sound. And the planet also has very powerful storms. So it is really known to be an electrical water, gas, kind of like methane charged atmosphere. It is a ice gas giant, they call it. It's water, methane, ammonia. I once saw a video which is described that you would actually see, if you were on Neptune, you'd see more kind of like diamonds falling from the sky, like diamond rain. There's a hydrogen helium atmosphere that reflects, then that's what creates the blue light effect. So we do see this giant planet as kind of like a blue ball. And just again, I'd also put, sound travels in water approximately 1,480, 1,500 meters per second, which is 4 times faster than it traveling in air. I think that's phenomenal. So when I think of all the sea creatures, and I think of whales and dolphins and other creatures that communicate via sound as well, as kind of like vibration in waters. I think it's phenomenal that sound travels so fast in water, and Neptune being a water planet. And this is all going to play into the mythology as well. So that's why I'm talking about this. We're going, why is she telling us about the planet? We're meant to be here for astrology. But just understanding the planet, I think, gives a really good flavor to what this mythology is about as well, and the effects of Neptune from an astrological perspective. The planet has this blue oceanic look, and it takes 165 years for it to go around the sun. So it's a really long, like that's his whole year, like the equivalent of like a year. And so that's why we're saying about 14 years per sign approximately. But because of those phenomenal winds, a day is 16 hours, like sunrise to sunrise. I mean, that's again phenomenal. So yeah, so it does go very, very quick on its axis. The diameter is about 50,000, nearly 50,000 kilometers. For context, Earth is about coming up to 13,000, so just under 13,000. So you can see here how much bigger it is than us, like about 4 times larger than the Earth. Much bigger. No, more than 4 times, yeah, sorry, but anyway, it's much larger. And the temperature, though, is extremely cold. It's minus 218 Celsius, minus 373 Fahrenheit. Very, very cold. The tilt is very similar to the Earth. It's around 28 degrees, but I believe because of the storms that rage above the surface, the tilt can actually look different from the outside. I don't know how else to say it, but the way it spins, it looks different. So yeah, and it is the only planet, from what I recall, which has one moon that goes in retrograde to the planet's direction. So yeah, I find that quite interesting as well. So it's got this one oddball moon. They say that that's because it's been captured, this moon. But anyway, so I thought I'd give you some information on Neptune, the planet. Again, I love doing this. I love talking about the planet itself, because I think the context of the actual the rock in the sky, however you want to put it, the matter, the material, for me is a material representation of the energies, actually. So it's good to see, how does the energy actually manifest, and it's the same principle as when we think from, as above, so below. How does the energy actually hit the ground, and what does it become? So yeah. So next slide, I'll go on to, hopefully this works okay. Yeah. So again, Neptune is the Roman name. Poseidonus is the Greek name. He is the son of Cronus and Rhea. So he is, again, one of the sons, along with one of the children, along with Jupiter, that was born to these. Cronus had several children. Zeus had to free his siblings. So when he frees the siblings, out comes first the stone that was used to replace Zeus, and then out comes all the children. I always thought that was interesting. So Poseidon ends up becoming one of the oldest children, because they all come out in reverse order, and Hestia becomes, or Vesta becomes, the youngest. So Poseidon is the older one, but originally he was actually the youngest to be born. Hades is, of course, is Pluto. Hera is Juno, Jupiter's wife. Also, we know now she is a major asteroid. Demeter, of course, that we know, the mother of Persephone, and of course Hestia, who's also known as Vesta. So these were the Olympians that were freed by Zeus, and then of course more Olympians were added that we know. So he is so Poseidon is an Olympian. By the way, sometimes I say Neptune and sometimes I say Poseidon. You will hear me actually say quite a lot of times, sometimes Poseidon when I'm talking towards the mythology, and you hear me a lot of times say Neptune when I'm talking about the planet. I apologize for any confusion. He is the god of the seas, the fresh waters, the oceans, the lakes. As I said before, his uncle Oceanus, who is a Titan, one of the sons, one of the children of Uranus, is the actual. He's kind of like, Oceanus is more, like I said, the belt around the earth, of that water, and then Poseidon is more like, the deity god, I would say. But of course, I always say with those who are practicing this mythological aspects, if you are, if it strikes your imagination, go with what you feel is right. I really love actually all this mythology. He Poseidon fathered numerous sea creatures, mythological creatures. He's holder of the trident. I wanted to point this out, which is controller of the seas, and storms and tectonic plates. The trident in Hindu mythology is actually even more a powerful symbol. And if you want me to do a small little video on that, I could do that. The trident in Hindu mythology. In Hindu mythology, the weapons are very, very important part of understanding things, and they're not always seen as weapons, they're also seen as tools. And I would really personally bring in my flavor to say, see the trident as a tool, not just as a weapon, because of the fact that how it's fashioned and how it actually carries the energy can also help us understand Neptune a lot more in that sense. Neptune has a command over the waters, so think of the hurricanes that come from those waters, the typhoons, the cyclones. Think of the butterfly effect, those winds that stir up the waters, and then that powerful tsunami wave that we get as well. So again, those ruptures that can occur through tectonic plates are also, I would say, as Poseidon energy. He's known to be one of the angry gods. I think that's a bit of a tough label, but we can say that he has a propensity to, there is a bit of the expression "fight fire with fire." He will turn around and have retribution if you think so. He will turn around and give his take on something. Let me put it that way. He's also venerated as the father of horses, kind of like a horse whisperer. He's venerated as a tamer. He's very equestrian feel, equestrian symbology there. He's known, so his symbols are dolphin, the equestrian seas, the trident. His consort is Amphitrite. I don't know if I can pronounce that. Amphitrite, the daughter of Oceanus and Tethys, sorry. So, and she's goddess of the seas. So, again, interesting that she's his consort. And Poseidon, astrologically, I hear again and again, and maybe I'm being influenced, he's known as a dissolver. What I personally think Neptune does is that he is a merger, not so much of a dissolver, so maybe one day I'll correct the slide. My personal feeling is that he wants us to merge into things. There's a very ethereal energy, so it can be very elusive at times. And it's a bit like water, he can slip through your hands. I would also say, kind of like a little bit of a alert warning. Sand also can slip through our hands. So it's not, and air also, it's not just Neptune, but water, you can see, you can feel it as it goes through you. He is, of course, controller of the waves. And, when you think of anything from a ripple to a tsunami, that could be a Neptunal energy. I also see him as hidden waters, hidden undercurrents. And these are words and terminologies that I'm using to give a bit of a flavor also of where the feelings of Neptune can ripple through your life. Let me put it that way, and how these energies are kind of like moving through us. I sometimes get asked if something happens, for example, I don't know, it could be as much as, like I've had it where like the boilers exploded and Neptune into Pisces literally coincided with in 20, when that happened, 20, I think it was 2011, when I first went into Pisces, my water boiler exploded literally at that time, literally like it was on those days. It was just like, and now I have also more plumbing issues now in the next place I'm living. So, his transits for me come up in plumbing. but the thing is that, on another note, for you, think of also other things. Maybe you're someone who lives by the seas, lives by a lake, lives close to the oceans, maybe have an affinity for the oceans. Again, this is a really interesting energy to observe your relationship with those larger water energies as well, and what that might mean for you. And again, like I said, he was in Pisces as like an intro, I call it the preview, last year from March to September. So it's a really, really good way to actually have a look like, were things a little bit different in certain areas of your life then, and to note them down, and maybe even to pause this and do that now. And then we're going to look at, of course, each sign, and as you get to your sign, you can jump ahead to that. You might think, oh, that actually does coincide. So that's one tip that I'm going to give you, to just note down anything from March to September last year. You might have a feeling, like for me personally, if I give you an example, was that I had a very interesting situation with a friend where I found myself increasingly just, in the relationship, I was woolly for sure. I take responsibility for myself. And I think that was very much me starting to understand, how does this actually play? And interestingly, Neptune is going to be going into my 6th and my 8th houses. So that really was about power transfer, where I transferred power and that's an eighth house energy issue, when really it was not for me to do. So it had a mirage effect, and it was good for me to realize, okay, this is my, where am I going wrong in this kind of thing, and correct course kind of thing. Hopefully I'm making sense. So let's go on. Okay, and because it's getting dark, just bear with me one moment. I'm going to switch on the light in my home. So I'm going to keep recording because I don't know if I stop this, how to start it again, or if I make a mess of it. So just hold on one moment while I switch on the light in my own home. Yeah, a little bit better. So sorry for the brightness if that changes it. But yes, okay, so a little bit better for me. Okay, so let's go on to the next one, which is Neptune and Pisces, and the themes that we just had. So we're at the end of this, but you might think, why is she showing me this? But I want to help you understand where Neptune has been. And of course, Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces. So he was at home in this sense. Sorry, I'm just out of Capricorn. He was at home when he was in Pisces. And what did we see? He was in domicile. He was in an ocean, it's an ocean territory. So we had a lot. This was an age where we really had a lot more media attention because of social media as well, which I'm going to get to. A lot of discussions on not just marine life. I think marine biology, marine science, marine technical understanding of it really came to light. We also had some phenomenal marine disasters. I'm sorry to say that, including, I think, was it the one of the rigs outside in the ocean. I don't want to say the name of the company in case I'm wrong, but that horrible disaster, which was just absolutely devastating to see so many sea creatures affected by that. We've got issues going on around the Arctic. I won't say anything further. But we also had this discovery of this huge pollution, this huge ring of pollution out in the Pacific. And I'm talking about these things because I think that this was the era where, at least for me anyway, it was really brought to light the damage that pollution has done to the seas and the oceans. And there has been increasing political, social, economic calls for change. And of course, that's one of the things that I think has been really important from this, because I see sometimes this commentary on some of the more other aspects of Neptune and Pisces, which I'm going to come to, which are important. Well, I want to point out some of what I think is the positive aspects. Neptune from the, I would say, from another aspect is there was a lot of thoughts on there was a lot of stuff on about social media. We had the birth of social media. We had this whole selfie thing, and and showing ourselves and this celeb like themes. And I think that really shows now the illusionary side of sometimes things, because then people were getting caught up in it, and how we look on camera became more important than perhaps sometimes how we were one to one with each other. I know for me, social media was great, especially because my family live abroad. So we were able to connect more. But then at one point, I thought we're just all living through lenses. And, and I had to rebuild some of my relationships more from the heart rather than here's photos of each other on something. It was like a really interesting time for me to learn again, social media and some of the things that are just not healthy about it. So I'm very careful now where my relationships one to one really do matter, and that means picking up the phone, meeting people, that kind of thing. And so this was more the illusionary side, I think, of what we see. Neptune can be nebulous, and Pisces is nebulous. So we saw themes sometimes of deception, again, not just on a personal level, but sometimes, we see through the use of certain technologies, we could have deception of what we're seeing. Whole videos, personally, this year, already, like at the end of last year, there were whole videos that I was seeing on YouTube where I realized this is AI generated, and I found myself really disturbed by it. So we do have to see that. I think that's part of this flavor. There's also a feeling sometimes with Neptune, and I call it the scale effect, where it's like a shimmer, and then we can be kind of like mesmerized by it, and then all of a sudden it's like, what did I see? So we can feel a little bit of disenchantment and delusion as well, and a loss of boundaries going on there as well. Neptune, some say it dissolves, I say there's a merger. But there's another part of it which I want to say also, which is creativity through imagination. Neptune is very creative, very powerful force. And I found that also, that for me, there were times when, for those who are into storytelling, into, let's say, creating artistic design, creating any kind of artistic content where your mind needs to explore new areas and new territories, pushing yourself using mediums that you have, and all of that, Neptune can push you into that area, and not push you, even just pull you. You're compelled to. And I found myself, because I had Neptune in the fifth for my sun sign, I found myself at times, doing really amazing creative stuff, and I could not, I was just like, where is this coming from? And then later I started to realize this is Neptune here, this is this Neptunal creative force. It was beautiful. And and so you might want to capture that in that sense. The Golden Dawn tarot decans, not the astrological traditional. I want to be very careful here. This is the Golden Dawn tarot decan allocation is an 8, 9, 10 of cups. These are of course Pisces themed because he's mutable, and so we were looking at kind of like where things have emotionally, we've had to just dissolve things and walk away. That's the 8 of cups energy. The 9 of cups energy is emotional satisfaction within, and of course 10 of cups is this wonderful feeling of this I'm home, and I have this brethren, and everything is wonderful and beautiful and just fantastic. And it can be a little bit, how can I put it, deceptive. It can be a little bit, you're not really seeing everything for what it is. So yeah, there is a bit of that. But at the same time, I think as humans, we need that sense sometimes of euphoria and fantasy. And I think it's how, in this world of creativity as well, we need that. So I would not say that, that, oh, I'm done with Neptune. Of course not, because Neptune is always going to be in our lives. It's more about how we work with this energy. So let's look at Neptune at 00 degrees of Aries, because yeah, he's coming to that. So he's coming to that point where we're going to be at like the world. This is the beginning in a way, it's a vernal axis. This is kind of like, this is not the spring equinox, because the spring equinox is when the sun goes into Aries, but this is now Neptune's kind of like, equinox moment, spring equinox moment. It's the Aries ingress for him. It's the start of a new 165-year cycle. The next time he'll be at 00 degrees of Aries will be 2188, and I'm not sure if Saturn will be there at that point as well. So just so you know, Saturn is also moving into Aries, and they're going to meet. There's going to be a separate video on Saturn and Aries, and then there's going to be a combined video of how to work with Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So you're thinking, God, this is a lot. But the reason why I'm doing it this way is because Neptune will be in Aries for 14 years. And that's different from the Saturn and Aries. So they kind of like, they will split apart at one point. And when they do, we're still looking at having to live with Neptune and Aries for the next 14 years, basically. So the last time that he was at 00 degrees of Aries, we had the start of the American Civil War, literally the day before he goes in. We also had London's first underground subway opening in 1863, and the Suez Canal forming in 1869, which I think the last point now is very interesting, because of course that was the opening of the Suez Canal was to actually reduce the time taken for ships to get through from one side of the globe to the other. And it still is controversial, because of course that does have an impact on marine life in the area, and of course we're having these kind of global discussions right now. So I thought that was really interesting just in the last week with some of the occurrences that we're seeing. And there's a major shift, there's an oceanic pull, there's that's Neptune, you've got to remember, has this very strong pull because of the seas, so it's the same vibrational energy as the moon in many ways. It's got that kind of like ripple effect. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. Okay, so that's this one. Okay, so we're now going to get into Aries, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about Aries. What's Aries like? So our ram, Aries is of course the first sign of the zodiac. It is the ram. It is named Aries is of course Ares, the Greek god of agriculture, sowing the seeds. In Roman mythology, he's known as Mars, and some say it's not quite the same god, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Ares, of course, was one of the sons of Jupiter and Hera, or Juno. So of Zeus and Hera, or Jupiter and Juno. Those are their names. And of course, and he's known to be very combative, martial-like energy, the founder of Sparta, one of the Greek nations, kind of like one of the Greek cities. A very strong martial force is Mars, who is the governor of Aries. Mars again appears, of course, with Scorpio, but we'll go into that another time. Aries is all about growth. It's cardinal. It's the start of spring. It's the start of the zodiac bell. It's very impulsive energy, energetic. Remember, with Aries energy, they don't really plan. So it's very important to understand that. And Neptune is, of course, about merger. So start thinking of what happens when those two come together. But Aries is very bold, so he has that boldness. The Aries energy, very courageous. I think of this little ram standing right at the top of a hill, ready. So yeah, it's a very bright energy, and I also think of the golden fleece, and going through the sky, and that reverberance it has. Let me go on to the next. So we're going to now look at the chart. And this is a 00 degrees Aries in, Neptune in Aries. Now, I cast this chart using London time zone because that is currently UTC, Universal Time. And it's at the point of meridian. When we go into British summertime, I'll change that. By the way, you might hear from, of course, I'm British, but I live outside of the UK. I use this time zone because of the because it's universal time, but I don't, so because it's the line of the meridian, not because I'm living there or anything like that. So just to be very clear, on this basis, we get actually a Leo ascendant for the natal chart of Neptune in Aries. What I found interesting about this was that I was looking at where the moon is when this happens, and the moon is at 13 degrees in Taurus. And I thought that was quite interesting. So there's a little bit of that Taurian moon energy coming through, which is grounding. So I already find that quite interesting that the moon is not that far around the wheel when Neptune is coming through. And of course, you can see behind it is, of course, Saturn. It's not very far now, because Saturn is getting ready to jump as well. So yeah, this is quite a momentous time. And what else can we see from here? Uranus is also now in its last degrees of Taurus. It will be jumping into Gemini on the 23rd of April, I think it is, that date. So we have so many, like the Saturn will go into Aries. I think it's first week of February. I need to check the date. I can't remember. Well, second week of February. They both meet on the 14th of February, I believe it is, at 00 of Aries, because Neptune will still be there. Neptune is going to take a very long time for it to move, because again, we're looking at 14 years, so it's going to take a very long time for it to just go through that piece of the segment. And they both meet at exactly 0 degrees of Aries on the 14th of Feb. I believe it's the 14th of February. And there's a separate video on that for that as well. Hopefully I'll be able to do that. So you can see here that we still have Chiron in Aries. I don't know if I can show you. We'll pick up my cursor. Yeah. So there's Chiron, the wounded healer. That Chiron is going to go into Taurus in September. So you can see this year is full of major changes. And, I say to some of my friends, there's a planetary posse going around right now. And that's this whole club here. I mean, it can't get any more funnier. I mean, so we have the sun in Aquarius when this is happening at 6 degrees at this time. Pluto is, of course, in Aquarius. So they've just had their conjunction. Mars is coming up pretty strong in Aquarius. And then we have Venus there as well, and Mercury. It's always the planetary posse that's going around. It's just amazing, this set. And they're going to be it's Mars that I see with a slight sextile to, of course, towards Aries, which is great. To see that. We're also having at the same time, as I understand, the Mars is having a sextile, towards with Neptune, and very, very, they're not quite on, because Mars is already at 2 degrees, but you can see that it's very close. And then at the same time, what I'm hearing again and again is, of course, is Saturn and Neptune are sextiling. So, and Neptune has just had its sextile with Uranus. Saturn and Uranus are sextiling, and then Neptune has just had its sextile with Uranus. So it's an interesting sky. That's what I'm trying to say in my blabbering motion. It's a very interesting sky, and we're not going to see this again in our lifetime. So it's a moment to capture. Now let's look at Neptune in Aries themes. This is a very long video. Hopefully you're still with me. So here's some of the themes that we're going to be seeing from January till May of 2038. So I think of Neptune as mermen. I think of when I think of mermen, I think of this when he was in Pisces. We were looking at this very fantasy realm, living, in the ocean, kind of like an under the sea enchantment kind of thing going on. And now he's in Aries, so he's on land. Mermen are on land. Mer people on land. So this fiery energy. I can't even spell. That's meant to energetic. That's sorry, typo there going on. But there's a very fiery energy going on. I really can't spell, actually. There's a whole botched there, sorry, going on of spelling. It's an agricultural setting when we think of Aries again, soil, plant seeds, the golden fleece. I've mentioned all of that. Neptune's going to be out of his comfort zone. I'm going to say that right away. I think he's going to be out of his comfort zone. But then I think about, here where I live, and I'm sure it happens in different parts of the world. The sea is used to help irrigate the land. So originally, some lands are actually still are in the sea, and then there's kind of like called reclaiming the land, where I know monks here have done it where in the country where I live, where monks have actually very slowly expanded the land and drained the seawaters from it in order to then use it to build and actually reclaim it, which I think is phenomenal. And it's used also as part of an agricultural method. I'm really not an expert on this area, and I know that the science is needed for it, but I think it's really interesting, this idea of reclaiming land from the sea. And I almost feel as if this is the boundary we're at, right? I also think of volcanoes because of the fact that we have this earthquake energy coming up, and a lot of volcanoes are near seas or are on seas and on oceans. And when you think of lands such as I was going to say Iceland, but it is true. Iceland is, of course, made on the North Atlantic ridge. Indonesia is also built on ridges. Japan is as well. And I really believe this is tectonic plate energy, volcanic energy, and yet we're still, of course, the sea, it plays an integral role as the volcanoes emerge, and we build lands. Hawaii is another example. So yeah, I find this phenomenal, this tectonic plate energy when I think of Neptune, and then I'm thinking of it with a cardinal fire sign. That's what I'm trying to say. It can feel as if, because we have the initiation energy of Aries, and then with Neptune going in, which is very creative forces in this fantasy world, we could see ourselves creating things on a whim or a dream. But we have to make sure that there's some plans in place. And I say that because Aries energy doesn't come with plans, and neither does Neptunal energy. But Saturn's coming in soon, so we're gonna have a separate video on that. But I'm just talking about this wider theme. And you might think, why didn't you not do a joint video? I was very tempted to do a joint video, but the reason why I haven't, of both Saturn and Neptune Aries, is because at one point Saturn, because it's much faster moving in the sense of it's much closer towards us, so it has a shorter transit in Aries. It has a 2.5-year transit in Aries. Saturn will whiz off, and then once it's cleared that, we're going to be left with Neptune still in that. And I found that the Neptunal wave is like a crescendo, which I'm going to talk about, and we have to be a little bit careful that as it goes over our degrees, certain degrees, you might feel that wave building, and it might be 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now. So we're going to talk about that as well. If you have planets in cardinals, for example, your sun is in another cardinal. So let's say again, Cancer, Libra, Aries, and cardinal Earth, Capricorn. If you have, let's say, major planet, like for example, your sun or your ascendant in there, you will feel this. They will be at a hard angle. I don't always say that's a bad thing. It can just mean that certain things have an abrasiveness, but they can unlock things. If you're in a fellow fire sign, such as, I'm losing my mind now, Sagittarius, Aries, and Leo. If you have a fellow fire sign, then this might give you a flow because of the fact that you will have these energies harmonizing with each other. Okay, so let me go on to that. So what can you do? First of all, how, and then we're going to go through each sign, so then you can jump ahead to yours. But if you want to have a heads up on this, and how can you work with the Neptune Aries energy for the next decade or so, first of all, find where Neptune is in your natal chart, and note the sign it's in and the degree, because that can have, when Neptune is going to go over that degree as it transits Aries, it can have an effect. And also, again, if you've got a Capricorn sun, sun, sorry, not as a child, but if your sun is in Capricorn, you're at, let's say, an early degree Capricorn, you were born earlier on in the sign, Neptune could be affecting you much earlier. And if you're, let's say, a later date Capricorn, it could be more at the later part of its transit. So again, and of course, if you have Neptune in, let's say, a fellow fire sign, so let's say if you have Neptune in Sagittarius, which is what I do, it's more going to be of a flow. So where this degree of Neptune might be going over, and it's going to be because my Neptune in Sagittarius is much later down when they start to when it starts to actually become like they go over each other. There could be a nicer flow. That's what I'm predicting. It's a long transit. See this as a wave with crescendos. That's what I would say, or waves. But it's not always like you're going to always be feeling it. It's more kind of like at certain moments. And it can you can sense this. So as it builds up, um, how do you experience the God as well? I've put that. So how do you experience? I thought, did I put right? How do you experience God? That's not correct. How do you experience the God? This is very clear, which is as in the mythology. I want to be very clear. I'm not talking religion or anything like that. If you choose to believe in the mythology, again, that's personal choice. But how do you see the God? How do you experience it? How do you envision it? Do certain things come up? When I think of Neptune, I think of fish scales. Actually, the first thing I think of mermen, merpeople. I think of the enchanted seas and all of that. And I also see kind of like, the cosmos and this wave in the cosmos. So as an oceanic wave, but that's my personal imagination. Perhaps you have other imaginations, and in terms of what you can practically do is again see this as a journey. There are meditations. Maybe you want to start doing some kind of meditations with water, meditations with when it comes to animal, fish energy. There's lots of stuff out there these days. Maybe it's about walking by the sea or by a river. You can journal about it. Look at having some kind of ocean themed journal if that works for you. Also think about what is it that Neptune wants you to learn. My experience has been, and I can talk about this, but that Neptune really can teach us some things. I know it's people go, oh, I feel disappointed with Neptune. I thought this was going to happen, or I thought I was going to fall in love, or something like that. Sometimes Neptune really can also help release certain things that we didn't even realize that we had, certain beliefs that we had. Very similar to, yeah, I think all planets can do this in their own way. And I found for me, again and again, that Neptune really is about um, my interrelationships and where they can become where they're healthy and when they become unhealthy as well, and where to be careful. So it's going to be interesting how that happens when it goes into certain houses. And when it goes into, sorry, depending on the house that's in for you, there's an undercurrent energy. I've spoken about that. And you can also get to know the god and the mythology. And if you work with crystals or chakras or use oracle cards and so forth, again, you might want to work with certain colors and so forth. So these are just suggestions. Okay, so let me go on to the next one. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through all the signs. It's a very long video. Hopefully for each sign, I'm going to be much quicker, and I'm going to try to get through this as fast as possible. Okay, so let's go into Aries, sun, moon, and rising, especially if this is your rising, your sun, this is really important to have a look at. And so this is the house of I am. So if you're an Aries rising, it will be your first house. And for Aries rising, obviously, and of course, this to do with self-identity, core of who you are. Expect some influence when it comes to self-perception, how you see the map of your life, how you feel about yourself, your character, your perceptions, your likes, your tastes, that kind of thing. There could be some illusionary energy there. There can also be some brain fog, to be quite honest with you, and some self-delusion. These are things, I know they might sound a bit tough, but just a bit of a heads up, this can happen. But you can also work with this in a creative way, have a flow within. Perhaps certain times also, we might even have put labels on ourselves, and Neptune washes those labels away, saying we don't need that. So it could be reshaping our own identity and perhaps working with the trident, working with that energy of the trident. We can also look at, well, who can I actually show myself to be at, that energetic force, and who am I becoming? Use your sixth sense and your intuition, because of course Neptune is here, right here on your core, and to do a sense check again, because of the fact that we're looking at Aries, first sign of zodiac. But anyway, remember, your sun sign is your core and your rising is who you're presenting, and they're both very important. So I personally always believe, check both your sun and your rising and make sure that, see if there's any overlapping there as well. And be careful with your identity in terms of also not getting so swept away. And, if other people are projecting onto you, this is who you are and this is what we think you are and all these things, allow yourself to have a sense check. Is this true? Is this really, and give yourself that space to question things and to feel okay within. This is an interesting point because of the fact that at this juncture in your first house, there is at 0 degrees. This is really a point where you will experience a lot of internal changes, and that Neptunal force will be in there that wants to, again, wash things away. But what you have to be careful of is that when it's washing things away, you don't, in a way, throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's what I'm trying to say. And so, because of the fact that Neptune has this mirage-like effect to sense check things, that's what I'm trying to say, in that first area of labels, I am, this is my identity, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's go on to, hopefully I'm moving fast enough with these. Taurus, sun, moon, and rising, of course, is going to be in your 12th house. So this is about ending, psychic intuition. Typically, this is a Neptunal house. So, in a way, there's going to be some of that harmonization. Really be careful about losing your boundaries here, because of the fact that you do have Neptune in really a 12th house energy space. Now, the fact is that because we have that Aries energy also coming through, it can help you to kind of like slow down in terms of letting go. Sometimes we can just let go too quickly certain things and think, okay, that was also not a good idea. Be careful of becoming so embroiled in your psychic intuition that it's almost like you might be going off into some fantasy space, and then it's kind of like, this is not real. You might be drawn to studying more higher realm topics, things around psychic intuition, psychic abilities. But again, the dreams will expand your dream area, because it's your 12th house, the house of endings, the house of universal merger. But at the same time, some of it might be a little bit delusional as well. So this is where you need to be careful. So you might have, let's say, a dream at night, and it could feel almost as if, no, this is real and so things. But again, you might want to do a sense check before going off into that and seeing, is this actually grounded in some reality and some truth. A great energy for creativity again, though, as well. So when we go into Gemini, this is going to be for Gemini rising. Of course, it's your 11th house. Also look at this as a Gemini sun. This is, this is an aspirational. I wrote, I aspire. This is really the house of philanthropy, charity, social justice. This is where we paint our banners and we go out there and say, this is what I stand for, and that kind of thing. And of course, it's also the house of technology. This is a Uranial house, actually, typically. So we are seeing that kind of like power to the people kind of energy. And for you might be finding this Neptunal energy going in there. So you might find yourself merging more with certain groups, certain people, certain like-minded kind of like themes, political themes. But be careful what the social message is that you're buying into. If it is a cause, is it really truly in line with who you are? When you collaborate on these, if you collaborate with one of these large groupings, is it really true to, again, your own personal beliefs and values? So, be careful what these groups and social themes actually are. That's what I'm trying to say to you. So let's say, for example, you find a grouping on Facebook and you think, this is it, I'm going to join this. This really aligns with my cause. Maybe find out, what is this organization about? Where is it actually based? What are their values? What are their missions? How are they showing responsibility, transparency, that kind of thing. I think this is a really important part of the 11th house energy, to not get caught up in something which really in the end you might find this is not really what I want to be a part of. Um, but it can also help you if you're someone that say that has held back before and you want to be more part of these spaces. It can help you wash into those spaces as well, and blend and merge with them. So again, this energy can be useful, but to channel it and to check things, I bring that back again and again in all of my themes when it comes to Neptune. So that's for Gemini. So let's go into Cancer. This is going to be your 10th house. This is your career space. I achieve. This is your ambitions. This is success. This is recognition. This is glory. This is, getting those accolades. This is getting the certificate, the stamp, the promotion, that kind of thing. This is climb to the top of the hill, because of course it's a Capricornial house. I'm making up these words, by the way. There is no such thing as Capricornial. I made it up, but it's the only way I can say it. But it's the house of achievement and career and ambition. It is a very high point in the sky. It's very, when people are visible. And of course, you can see it there. That's where you're going to have Pisces sitting. Neptune sitting. But it can mean that you end up believing things in this area that aren't real. Again, it's the shimmer effect. I always think of the fish scales. It's that shimmer of the scale. And you need to be careful about, check your motives. What's really driving you? What is this about? Is this based on some illusion or fantasy or dream as you climb the ladder kind of thing? And it can be cloudy, that vision. So there's a mirage effect. And again, you want to make sure that you ground yourself and ask yourself and use, especially as a Cancer person, because you're ruled by the moon, the intuitive side of you could also just hedonistically get caught up in this. But this is where you need to ask yourself, is this really rooted? Use that side of the Cancer side. Is this rooted, actually? Because Cancer is also about roots. So make sure that you kind of like, if you find yourself, let's say for example, being pumped up for something at work, it could be amazing, it could be, but just make sure that, like, why am I getting, what's, you don't have to be kind of like, how can I put it, I don't want people to be constantly suspicious and paranoid. That's not the point of this. You need to enjoy yourself, but just sense, again, I bring that word back again, that term, sense check things. That's what I'm trying to say. And make sure that whatever you're aiming for, is it's really in alignment with who you are. Okay, so let's go on to Leo, Sun, Moon, and Rising. This is going to be your 9th house. Your 9th house is all to do with tradition, journeying, other cultures. I always see as traditionally when we have people going to university, and in the old days they would need to go to another part of the country, another part of their own world, packing their bags, and they're off on a train, or they're walking for doing a massive cross-country journey just to get to this institute. I'm thinking of 12th, 13th century medieval times, where going to university was an adventure. You were going to meet new people, possibly be well out of your comfort zone, be in an institute. But also got to remember that these places are entwined sometimes with dogma and tradition and rule based. I'm thinking of the Hierophant energy. And so, I'm also thinking of, this is a Jupiterian feel. So think of Jupiter and his court. So you're going to have Neptune in this, and that means new belief systems and new ways of seeing things. But again, it's a mirage effect. So whilst you merge into this outward journey and you're out there and you're kind of like into this experience going on, to just be careful about what this actually means, what's it grounded in, and to not really sign up to so much, and then you're sitting there going, I've overdone it, with all these courses, all these trips, and or I thought the trip would be like this, and really it wasn't, just not what I expected. You could find yourself actually also going on a lot of sea trips, which perhaps you might really like, ocean-based trips or river-based trips. But again, just make sure that whatever you're signing yourself up for on these journeys and cultural exchanges, that there is a bit of a, again, I bring that term back, a sense check to it, and what are you actually seeing, and and so forth. Virgo, sun, moon, and rising. So this is the desire house, the I desire house. It has a scorpionic feel. We're looking at sex, addiction, could be also compulsivity, obsessiveness, this psychological scorpionic energy of going underground. I'm a Scorpio sun, so and I'm a Virgo rising, so this is quite funny for me. So I understand what this is about. You know, it's other people's monies, other people's bonds. Be careful here about power and the exchange of power, because as a Virgo rising, I experienced this from March to September last year, where I could end up merging my power with another, thinking that I'm being helpful, but actually I'm not. I'm actually somehow trying to control, or they're controlling me. It's not a healthy situation to be in. Or I find myself just giving, 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 which is a very Virgo thing to do. We are service oriented people, but it's not healthy giving. It's not a giving which has a reciprocity in it, if I get the word right. So be careful of that. And I put here Seven of Cup energy. You know, you might be faced with lots of choices and this mirage effect. And then we're sitting there going, okay, but what am I actually picking out of all of this? And be careful with your resources and blurring those boundaries, lending, debt, all of that. So because power is not just, power can be energetic, power can be in influence, but power can be also money and food resources or whatever. By the way, I say everything with just a hint of, and we're not here to be stingy or miserly or overbearing. It's about finding our balance and seeing how Neptune is influencing us as we try to navigate this. Okay, so I'm going to go into the next one, which is Libra, sun, moon, and rising. So this is about balance. This is about justice, which is actually traditionally your house. So it's interesting because you will have Neptune on your opposite side, which I've had as a Virgo rising, so I know what that's like. I just had it in Pisces. It can feel like there's a weight on the other side, and almost like we're being drawn to the other side. So partnerships, marriages, contractual agreements, the balance kind of like goes over, and we're drawn to other people. But what you got, and one-to-one collaborations, what you got to be careful is like, what are you actually drawn to, and is it real? What you see is, and to be careful of deception there. It can feel a little bit elusive. The external can feel elusive. It can feel a little bit like mirage. So you might have somebody saying, yes, I'm really interested in not just dating, but I don't know, hiring you, or we're going to work together in a partnership. But somehow there's a mirage in that, and to be careful that you again check things, take a step back if you need to, don't rush into things, allow yourself the time to consider it, and check in with yourself as well. Does this feel real, or is this another illusion going on? Okay, so then I'll go into the next one, which is Scorpio, sun, moon, and rising. So this is going to be the sixth house, which is service. So be careful here. Now, again, Scorpio is a very power driven. It's another Mars ruled energy. Aries is Mars ruled, of course. So in a way, we have Neptune in a fellow Mars ruled sign. That's helpful because it can help to rein in Neptune a little bit. Just think of the day-to-day work and your routines, and this is a place where we kind of like, draw with our ruler kind of thing, and set boundaries. I say this because I'm also a Virgo rising, so I know what that sixth house energy is. But, need to allow flow into our routine. So perhaps, to segment in some resting time in between, segment in some relaxation time, allow yourself to have maybe evening meditations or morning whatever works for you, even just a 1 minute meditation in the middle of the day where you just pause and do some breathing for a few seconds, all helpful. Do make sure that when it comes to giving and your day-to-day, you're not overdoing it and burning out. And Saturn's going to coming in, so this is going to be very heavy, all of this day-to-day area. With Neptune, just make sure that you check things. That's what I'm going to say again. It's be careful, and be careful with martyrdom, and be careful with this mirage of I'm going to give so much and it's all going to be fantastic, and and then you're left with feeling powerless because you've given all your power. And and the Scorpions can do that, or you want all the power and it's like, oh, I'll do it all, and then you're just like exhausted. So yeah, that's where I think the mirage effect can come in, and that's when you need to check, is this actually feasible according to what the resources I have. Okay, so let's go into Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising. This is going to be the fifth house. I create passion. Again, I know what that feels like because I had it as Virgo. So as Scorpio, I had Neptune in my fifth. Very creative area. Of course, it has that Leonic feel. So there's a lot of fire in that space. And you're a fire. If you're Sagittarius, you're a fire energy anyway. So there's a little bit of fire going on here. And then Neptune coming through. So it can either go one way, you can go into kind of like, and everything goes out, or you can actually channel that creativity. What I would think about this is that the creative juices will be really at a heightened at certain points in this whole flow of 14 years, is to capture them and channel them, to not let them, how can we say it? We can channel the whirlpool energy and create something, or we can channel a whirlpool, or we can have a whirlpool energy and then we just sucked down, and then that's not helpful either. So just to be careful there in terms of that creative thing going on, the creative fires. Keep a notebook handy, that's what I've written, but be careful with multiple projects going down rabbit holes and that kind of thing. It's that whirlpool effect again. You want to keep your head above the waters and see what concretely you can do or drive at, and as a Sagittarius, remember you have a bow and arrow. You are, you're on land animals actually. You have that fire energy. I'm thinking of Ferenz, the centaur. Just remember that, with that bow and arrow, you can aim, and you can have that aim to help you stay a little bit focused and targeted, rather than in this whole wave of creativity. And then you're thinking, all I've done is I feel like seasick. They've just gone round and round, a fishbowl kind of thing, which you don't want to do. So that's for Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising. Capricorn, Sun, Moon, Rising. This is your fourth house. This is I home in the roots, of course, because it's there on the bottom of your chart. This is very much a very sensitive part of your chart. It's your family, it's your ancestors, it's your familial ground, it's your abode, it's the heart, home space. If I get that right, it's very feminine feeling. And so Neptune is going to be in a very watery area actually, because it's traditionally you're in a fourth house, which is governed by the moon. Make sure you don't have any leaks around the home, I've written. Look at your relationship with your family. There will be flows between them, but also be careful that you're not projecting onto other people or have expectations that are unreal, or they have expectations of you that are unreal. Again, be careful of that flow within you with your family members. It could be that you're I definitely, I think I was just thinking of when it was in Capricorn, when Neptune was in before Pisces was in Aquarius, and before, yeah, I was just thinking of kind of like, when he is in that fourth house energy, that you could have relationships which are just completely unclear, and with your family. And what he can do though is open up your psychic intuition with your roots, with your ancestors. That could be something to explore over time. And again, it depends on where in the crescendo of the wave and the degree that it's going over. But that's Neptune in the fourth. Aquarius, this is going to be in your third house. So I communicate, I think. So of course it's that Geminial house. I'm making up that word. Again, having this water energy in your third, it can really start to, this is the house of neighborhoods, everyday trade, like everyday, like going to the hairdressers, going to the post office, going to the local grocery store. It's that kind of thing, but it's also about analysis and our thinking and our communication. And Neptune can make this very hazy. And this house likes things to be clear, or it likes to think. So if you have this water-clogged energy into your thinking, it can be all over the place. So be careful you don't get so lost into that space, but then it's kind of like, you might have some community project, for example, which looks great, but you need to make sure that you check it, or a sibling project that you have where you're doing something with your sibling, but just make sure that there's clarity between you two. And so that's where I would say that, that this is really where it will start to manifest its energy. And sense check things again. Take a step back if you need to, and ask yourself, is that real? Or if you're working on something with somebody else and it's like a little community project, make sure that you're both clear on your aims and what you want to achieve and that kind of thing, and what you see coming out of it. And it can be very creative, because Neptune is very creative force. It can be fun and you can have some great outcomes, but just make sure that, again, that this the thinking is clear with both of you. And again, also, it's decision making processes. Before I forget, this is also decision making. You need to have some clarity there. And then finally, let's go to Pisces. This is going to, of course, be in your second house. So I value what it is in terms of your worth, your self-worth, your assets, your property and what you own. It's going to be affecting your beauty and your charisma. Traditionally, this is a Venusian house, so the second house. So, but again, it kind of like merges well. But this is where you might also go off into a tangent with, you might have an idea that I have X, Y, and Z money in my assets, and it's not real, or it's inflated somehow, or and also in terms of self-worth, you could end up becoming disillusioned or disenchanted, and thinking this is how I felt about myself, but actually it isn't, and all these kind of things. You could end up getting a little bit of that. I don't like that word narcissism, because it's so much banded around, but we can have that where we can become self-absorbed, and then we're kind of like, oh no, this is self-absorption. These are things that all of us suffer from, I believe. I don't want to band it around that. I mean, in little pieces, it can happen. And I think that we can all just turn around and go, okay, I need to rein this in a bit. And that's okay. That's part of it. But where Neptune really can have an effect is on our self-acceptance, and really we can feel a little bit like, I can't get a grip on this. And this is where you can work on yourself in terms of like, actually, I can use this Neptunal energy of merger to merge with, belief in myself, belief in the higher realm, that I am okay in this universe, that kind of thing. It can also give you this ethereal glow up, I believe. So, I think that there's aspects that can be tapped into that can be really helpful for us. And it's just how we use this energy. So I'm going to stop there. Hopefully this is something that you found helpful. Let me go right back to the beginning if I can, so that I just want to say, like, where are we? Yeah, it's this is like the beginning. Let's go to this one. Let's end on this one. This is going to be a very interesting time for all of us, and I just see this as allowing yourself to, because it's over such a long period of time, maybe come back and revisit this video if it's helpful. Maybe make some notes. Go back and find where Neptune is in your chart, your natal chart. Find where Neptune, and find where, of course, where you might have planets in fellow cardinal signs or fellow fire signs, and what degrees they're at. For example, so again, fire signs is Sagittarius, Leo, and Aries. And of course, in terms of cardinal, we're looking at Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer. So again, look at where you have planets in those, and see what degrees they're at. See where Neptune is. Of course, he's going to be at 0 degrees, and how he travels. And and as they get closer to a certain degree, like I said, I have in terms of cardinal, I have let's say, for example, in terms of cardinal, I have Libra, Pluto in Libra. When that will get close, that they will actually be at a hard angle with each other. And when that happens, perhaps I will see some changes because of the fact that Libra is my second chart when it comes to money, self-worth, that kind of thing. So, that's when you can really start to play with where the synastry is between your natal chart and the current event that's going on. But again, it's a 14-year transit. So, well, now it looks like 12 because of the fact that, yeah, we've already had the last year piece, but, we're looking at a very long transit. So, do see this as, again, waves of crescendo and depending on the degree and where it's traveling. And and I always believe that there's also the positive sides. It's not just all disenchantment or illusion or mirage. It can be, but it can also be about huge unblocking of creative forces, storytelling, communication. But in terms of creating stories, creating fantasies, creating new images and that kind of thing. And I think that there's a lot there as well. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for joining me today. I hope to be doing more of this, and feel free to let me know how this came across for you. Thank you again for joining me. Goodbye.